Excuse me. We have a very rich Parsha today, so I'm going to get started right now. I sometimes forget, sorry about that, to say the prayer for study of Torah at the beginning of each class. So let's do that together. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. God has commanded us to engage in the study of Torah. So last week's Parsha was called Ki Tavo, which means when you go out. And the context was when you go out to war and you see a beautiful maiden and you desire her, et cetera, et cetera. So that was all discussed last week, but just want to focus on the words Ki Tavo. So Tavo means literally to go out. And if you know what the Exodus from Egypt is called in Hebrew, anybody know? Yitziat Mitzrayim. It has Yitziat has the tzadi and aleph, the same, excuse me, the same is the root of go out. So the Exodus literally means going out from Egypt. So we had Ki Tavo, and now we have kind of a parallelism because our Parsha this week is Ki Tavo, when you come, or in this case, when you enter the land. And I'm not going to obviously try to cover the entire Parsha, but there are some points that I want to highlight with you, and I want to go very deeply into one idea, which is the idea of Amen, but you will see that. So let's just begin in the beginning. Oh, and I should say parenthetically, this is my son's bar mitzvah portion, and I had the pleasure of reading part of it, reading part of the Torah that day. So I have a very special feeling for this Parsha, but that's just personal. Could I have a reader for, we are in Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 1 in the Eitz Chaim. We're on page 1140. And I would like to have a reader for verses 1, 2, and 3. No, 1, 2, 4. Verses 1 to 4. Mary, thank you so much. Go right ahead.
When you enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you as a heritage, you shall possess it and settle in it. You shall take some of every first fruit of the soil which you harvest from the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Put it in a basket and go to the place where the Lord your God will choose to establish his name. You shall go to the priest in charge at that time and say to him, I acknowledge this day before the Lord your God that I have entered the land that the Lord swore to our fathers to assign us. The priest shall take the basket from your hand and set it down in front of the altar of the Lord your God.
Thank you. So what we have here is the idea, well, a couple of ideas. One is that God has given us this land as a heritage, and yet we must not take it for granted. It's a gift from God. And to recognize the blessings that God has given us when we've had our first harvest, and every year when we have a harvest, you take your first fruit and you bring it to the temple or whatever holy place God chooses to establish his name in. And you offer it up. You offer it up as a way of expressing your gratitude. So it's a thankfulness offering. And then there's this very interesting passage that follows. You are told to recite a passage, and let's have somebody read that. It makes it a ritual. So we're on Deuteronomy 26, verse 5 to 10. Anybody want to read that? That's page 1141 in Eitz Chaim.
Gail, before we do that, I'm sorry. I do have a question.
I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand.
That's fine. Bikurim, does that mean first fruits? Bikurim.
Literally, I don't know the meaning, but that's how it's translated. Yes.
So, yeah. So, but is the word bikurim there in that verse? I just
No,
couldn't.
no. Velakachta, excuse me, verse 2. Velakachta me reshit kol pri ha'adama. Reshit is the number one, the first, like Rishon, Yamod Rishon, the first Aliyah. So it's not called Bikurim here. It's called Bikurim in the context of Shavuot, but I do believe it's the same. It's the same concept.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I just couldn't
No,
find
good
it.
question. Good question. Okay, Mary. Wait, I'm sorry, Judy. You were about to read verse 5, please. Thank you.
You shall then recite as follows before the Lord your God. My father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Lord, the God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. The Lord freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm, an awesome power, and by signs and portents. He brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, O Lord, have given me.
Thank you. Anybody recognize this passage?
It's from Pesach.
Right. Good, Jay. It's in the Haggadah, early on in the Haggadah, the Magid section. The after the preliminaries, we start telling the story, and it evokes the memory of our slavery in Egypt. So remember, I was saying Yitziat Mitzrayim, going out from Egypt. There are echoes of the Exodus, which is the foundational event in Jewish history, and then followed by Sinai. But this is a very interesting example and a rare example in the Torah of a prescribed prayer, where the prayer is written and we're told exactly what to say in this situation. That's kind of rare in Torah. I guess you could say it's one of the early instances of the Torah telling us exactly what to say in this situation. And what it's about is our history. So the individual, and it switches in this passage from I to we. We're identifying with our people's history, but we're also doing an act as individuals to connect with it. Okay, so here in this prayer, or in this statement, I guess you could call it, this formula, we're speaking directly to God. And then we're instructed, if you go on to 1142 verse, the rest of the verse, of verse 10, you shall leave your offering before the Lord your God and bow low. And now I love this commandment, and you shall enjoy together with the Levite and the stranger in your midst all the bounty that the Lord your God has bestowed upon you and your household. You shall enjoy. We are commanded to enjoy, to be not only to be grateful for, but to actually enjoy. So, in the Birkat Hamazon, there's the line, V'achalta, v'savata, uve'rachta. You shall eat, you shall be satisfied, you shall enjoy what you're eating, and you shall bless. It's the three steps. And every time we eat, if for those who say the Birkat Hamazon, or whenever you say it, it's a reminder to be grateful for those blessings and to enjoy them. Okay, now we go on to another law, which is the tithe.
Okay.
Yes.
So two things. I think, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that in our faith, we thank God before we eat as well as after, and most faiths are just before. And also, I'm sort of comforted by knowing that we're presenting vegetation rather than animals.
Although there are lots of animal sacrifices but yes, that's a nice point. Thank you. Ecologically sound. Good. All right, so I'm just going to briefly mention the tithe, which comes up in verse 12. You must set aside 1/10 of your harvest every third year, and that is for the Levites, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. really a central ethical teaching through the whole Torah of thinking of the poor, thinking of those who don't have enough. And it's our duty, it's our responsibility, it's a commandment to make sure that we take care of them. Okay, so that's for the opening of the Parsha. Now, what happens next, and I'm kind of rushing along because I want to get to the central emphasis for today. What happens next is you're told to, okay, so we're going to, hold on, let me find, chapter 27 of Deuteronomy. Verse 2, as soon as you have crossed the Jordan into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall set up large stones, coat them with plaster, and inscribe upon them all the words of this teaching. So that's the first thing you're supposed to do. And we're kind of going backwards chronologically because the first fruits, you can't do that mitzvah until you've been living in the land for a while. But now we're back to when you first enter the land. The first thing you're supposed to do is write the words of this teaching on these stones that are specially prepared, and you make an altar on that mountain, and the mountain is specified that it is Mount Ebal in verse 4, page 1145. Set up these stones about which I charge you this day on Mount Ebal, and coat them with plaster, and there you shall build an altar to the Lord your God. So I'm going to come back to Mount Ebal in a minute because that is central in our story in this chapter. Okay, so a few weeks ago we had Parasha Re'eh, which Dr. Bohr was teaching, and if you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 11, I want to show you something there. Or if you don't have it, I'm just going to read it. This is on page 1061 if you have the Eitz Chaim. Anybody want to read just a little bit of this? See, this day I set before you.
I can read.
Okay, thanks, Richie.
See, this day I set before you blessings and curses. Blessings, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I enjoin upon you this day. And curse, if you do not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn away from the path that I enjoin upon you this day, and follow other gods, whom you have not experienced. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are about to enter and possess, you shall pronounce the blessings at Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Ebal. Both are on the other side of the Jordan, beyond the west road that is in the land of the Canaanites, who dwell in the Arabah, near Gilgad, by the terebinths of Moreh.
Thank you. Okay, so what God is saying here is when you get to the land and you're inside it, you need to go to these two mountains. Now, one of them, Ebal, already has the altar set up on it. Although, by the way, parenthetically, there's disagreement among the rabbis in the Talmud of on which mountain was the altar built, and on which mountain, just on which mountain the altar was built. Was it Ebal or Gerizim? And I'll come back to that. But anyway, you have to pronounce a blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Ebal. Well, I'll just tell you right now, the reason that some of the commentators say the altar was built on Mount Gerizim is because there are blessings. It would be a religious site. It would be a sacred place. That would make sense. But that is a disagreement in the Talmud. I kind of favor that interpretation. Okay, but what I want you to see here is where these mountains are located. And Eileen, you have a photo, if you're able to show it, of how these mountains look today. Thank you. So on the top is Mount Gerizim, on the bottom is Mount Ebal. I found just last night, and too late to bother Eileen with it, but if you go to Wikipedia and look up Ki Tavo, the name of this week's Parsha, you'll see a great picture of the two mountains, which it's like it's a hill with a saddle in between, a valley, and then another hill or mountain just next to each other. So just visualize a hump and a saddle in the middle, and then another hump. But here, what I like about these pictures is you can see, and thanks to Dr. Board for these, you can see into the surrounding land quite far. Okay, so a little more detail on where these are located. They're in these mountains are in the current, what we call the West Bank, near the city of Nablus, and the biblical name for that city is Shechem. The Mount Ebal is one of the highest peaks in the West Bank. It rises to 3,068 feet above sea level, and Mount Gerizim is 200 feet lower, approximately. So these are the two mountains where we're being instructed when we first get into the land to go, and they have something to do with blessings and curses. Okay, thanks, Eileen. You can take that one down. So in Parasha Re'eh, whoops, let me go back to gallery. There we go. In Parasha Re'eh, these curses and blessings on the mountains were mentioned, and then we have several chapters that came after where Moses was expounding all the commandments that we're supposed to follow. And now we're going back and we're going to find out exactly what's going on with these blessings and curses in our Parsha today. How is that supposed to unfold? So we have a very dramatic ceremony that's being described that's happening on these two mountains. So let's go to, hold on, let me find the right page. Page 1144 and 1145. I'm sorry. It's 1145. Moses and verse 9. But Moses and the Levitical priests spoke to all Israel, saying, silence. And in Hebrew, it's Shema Yisrael. So I'm in chapter 27, verse 9 on the top of page 1146 in Eitz Chaim. Silence. Hear, O Israel, today you've become the people of the Lord your God. Heed the Lord your God, observe his commandments and his laws, which I enjoin upon you this day. Thereupon Moses charged the people. Let's have somebody read in verse 12 what's going to happen. Verses 12 to 14. Thanks, Eileen. Go ahead.
After you have crossed the Jordan, the following shall stand on Mount Gerizim when the blessing for the people is spoken. Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin. And for the curse, the following shall stand on Mount Ebal: Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali.
Mm-hmm.
Shall then proclaim in a loud voice to all the people of Israel, cursed be anyone who makes a sculptured or molten image abhorred by the Lord, a craftsman's handiwork, and sets it up in secret. And all the people shall respond, Amen.
Right. Okay, you can stop there for the moment. So we need to imagine this scene. Moses is like what I see him as the stage director here. And this is a tableau, almost like a piece of theater that is unfolding. So you have this dramatic communal ceremony that's being staged with the entire people. The purpose is to reaffirm the people's covenant with God. The 12 tribes are divided into two groups of 6 each, and the tribes are named, which ones are supposed to go up on Mount Ebal and which ones are supposed to go up on Mount Gerizim. The commentators see no particular significance, by the way, to which tribes are chosen for which mountain. It's just there seems to be no explanation for that. Yes, David.
Thank you. In my Humash, I have a below the line commentary for Mount Gerizim. For the blessing, only tribes who derive their ancestry from the children of Leah and Rachel are assigned.
Oh, thank you. I could not find that. That's very interesting. Thank you. Okay, good. So there is a rationale. I mean, that would make sense. In the Torah, there's usually a reason for almost everything. Beverly.
Yeah, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what BC was this happening? Because I remember in Egypt, what was it? Akhenaten, I can't say his name, Akhenaten. He said you were not supposed to, he gave up idols and also believed in one God. So I don't know whether that was before or after this. I'm trying to put it in the context of time. I don't know.
Are you referring to Abraham?
No, the Egyptian, I guess Pharaoh. I can't.
I think that was later after.
That was later than he.
That was later after the Israelites had left.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question though for you.
Yes, David, go ahead.
And part of your ceremony, is this implying that the people could hear from one mountain to the next, so when they say the blessings, the people on the curse can hear it, and when they say the curse, the people on the blessings could hear it? And if they tried that out today, I want to know, have they gotten up on the mountain and say, hey?
Well, that's where I'm going. I'm trying to imagine, and we're doing this little exercise together. Let's imagine the scene. Yes, Richie.
So the Levites are in the middle,
yes,
and so they're the ones actually proclaiming.
Yes.
So okay. It's halfway. They need to get be heard.
Right, but everything is designed to be heard. Shema Yisrael. Everyone. And in order to hear, notice it says silence, like sheket b'vakasha, like your third grade teacher in Hebrew school used to say to bring a class to order. Silence, hear, O Israel. You have to be quiet in order to hear. Okay, so I'm going back to trying to imagine this scene.
Gail?
Yeah.
Can I just add one little, I was curious to know what's the difference between a hill and a mountain. So I Googled it. And it explains that hills are easier to climb. They're less steep and not as high. They both have summits, but according to the U.S. Geological Survey, there's no official difference between a hill and a mountain. So I thought it had to do with height. So maybe these mountains really weren't so big. Maybe it was easier to.
3,000 feet and 3,000 minus 600 above sea level. It's not like 14,000 feet like mountains in Colorado, no. But, they have they're walking up on foot. Okay. All the people are walking up on foot. So just try and visualize this. You've got this monumental setting, as how I'm imagining it, with like endless sky. There's no towns there, like in the picture that Eileen showed us of what it looks like today. Well, there might have been some inhabitants, but it's pretty clear view. And the people have been climbing up, and they're kind of breathless, I would say, and dazzled by the sun. Some of them are on the slope, some are up to the summit. How many people were there? So according to Numbers 26, verse 51, 601,730 men entered the promised land. But this is involving all the people, the entire people. So now you have to add in women and children. And so commentators have estimated that there would have been 2 million people present at this ceremony. 1 million on Mount Ebal and 1 million on Mount Gerizim. Now, I don't think we're meant to take this literally, but there is an emphasis that all the people were involved in this as they were at Sinai. But what a difference between this ceremony and Sinai. At Sinai, they couldn't go near the mountain, or, there was fire and there was thunder and lightning. this is entirely a human-made phenomenon. That was a God-made phenomenon, designed to kind of, I don't want to say terrify, but inspire awe, shock and awe in the people. Whereas this is very participatory. It's totally participatory. So I think that's an interesting difference. They're all over the mountain. And once they're assembled, the Levites are in the middle and they proclaim a series of 12 curses that will happen to if the people commit idolatry or other sins that are specified. And the instruction is, and they look from one mountain to the other. Each time they say a curse, they look to Mount Ebal. Each time they say a blessing, they look to Mount Gerizim. And the people all answer, Amen. Let it be so. Every time they hear one of these blessings or curses. So it's very interesting because when you look at the curses, if you go to page 1141, after every curse, and the behavior that's being cursed is insulting your father or mother, idolatry, subverting the rights of the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, who were just remembered in the commandment of the tithe, incest, sodomy, and killing your fellow man in secret, accepting a bribe, and not upholding the tenets of the terms of this teaching. So these will, if you do any of these things, you will be cursed. And all the people say, Amen. Okay. So just imagine what that sounded like, right? All these voices sounding Amen. It must have been just overpowering. It must have been amazing. Even if there weren't 2 million people, just a crowd of people doing this must have been very, really impressed the people who were participating in this. So I want to stop for a minute and talk a little bit about Amen. When we say, what are some of the times when we say Amen in our lives today? Judy.
After a blessing has been said by somebody, we will say Amen as acknowledgement, as if we had said the blessing.
Exactly. As if, and in the Talmud, the rabbis say that the person who answers Amen to a blessing, it's as if he himself said the blessing, or in some cases, they say it's even better than saying the blessing. An enthusiastic, heartfelt Amen almost stands in for the blessing, which is giving Amen a lot of power, right? When else do we say Amen? I will point out that we almost always say Amen. I think we always say Amen in community, in the company of other people. It's a communal thing as it's presented here in this scene. But when else do we say Amen? After we hear a blessing, definitely. Think about Torah reading. If you have an aliyah, you finish your aliyah, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah, and what does the Torah reader then say? Amen, before he starts or she starts reading that portion of the Torah. Eileen, did you want to say something? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. Is there
yes.
a difference between Amen and Selah?
Yes, Selah means forever.
What's the word again?
What is Selah?
Selah. Amen. Oh. Yes, sometimes Selah is used after Amen. Amen, Selah. The two words are coupled. Selah just means forever and ever, or everlasting. Okay. How about the Kaddish? Yikadal v'yikadash yemei rabah v'yalmad yivrach yirutev yamlich malchutei v'chayichon of yomeichon of chayedechol beit Yisrael v'imru amen, and let us say amen. Sometimes it's v'nomar amen, and we shall say amen in the refuah shalema prayer. that we sing in the middle of the Torah reading, Debbie Friedman's melody. The Hebrew part is, and it ends with the Nomar Amen. And when we sing it in English, and let us say Amen, right? So the root of the word Amen is connected to the Hebrew word for faith, emunah. You can hear Amen in emunah. And one of the commentaries is that, I'm sorry, David, do you have a question? YouTube video of this whole scene?
Yeah, I'm surprised again. I would imagine today that the Orthodox would get people together and do this.
Reenact it?
A reenactment.
Wow. Jay says no, emphatically no. I don't know. There is Torah theater. Some groups do. To me, it would be about as challenging as reenacting crossing the Red Sea, but we have the movie The Ten Commandments, which imagine was like, I don't know that there's a movie of this. What an interesting idea. Okay, I'm gonna
the problem is it's in the West Bank and it's not a place where they can do easy, safe reenactments.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, but you could reenact it somewhere else, I suppose. Yeah. Mary, is your hand up? Oh, okay. Sorry. So we have in Parasha Ki Tavo this word amen, which appears 12 times in these 12 consecutive verses with the curses. And I'm going to read you a little bit from Rabbi Eli Confer's commentary on the word amen. The word amen can mean essentially three things. First, accepting the consequences of a statement. So this would be a good example. Cursed be he who strikes down his fellow countrymen in secret, and all the people shall say amen, meaning, yeah, that person who does such an awful thing deserves to be cursed. Okay, amen, second meaning, expressing agreement about something that has happened or is currently the case. And thirdly, expressing belief in something that will happen but has not yet come to pass. Sort of like let it be. And I would say that's probably typical of the prayer when we say at the end of the service on Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Ta'amsenu. Remember, it's the one with all the Hayoms. On this day, strengthen us. On this day, give us prosperity. It's our wishes for the new year. And everyone, the tune invites us in to say amen at the end of every line. And everybody's hungry by then. And it's usually sung very enthusiastically. Like, oh boy, it's almost time to go home and have lunch. So it's a kind of let it be. But the use of amen in our Parsha really indicates accepting the consequences of a statement. And the tradition, Rabbi Hanina in the Talmud, sees the word amen as an acronym for the statement, El Melech Ne'eman. God the King is trustworthy. So El, Aleph, for in amen, Melech, Mem, and excuse me, El Melech Ne'eman. Ne'eman, it begins with a nun. So Aleph, Mem, Nun. El Melech Ne'eman. God, the King, is trustworthy. Now, I want to point out that in this Parsha, there are 98 curses. I did not count them. 98 curses and about 15 blessings. Very, very imbalanced. Let's look at the blessings on page 1148. Let's read those blessings, because these are the only ones in the whole Parsha. It's a tremendous imbalance between curses and blessings. Anybody want to read some blessings? Because it's very refreshing to hear something good. Go ahead, Beverly.
Where do you want me to start now? If you
chapter 28, verse 1, page 1148, if you have the Eitz Chaim.
So, Now, if you obey the Lord your God to observe faithfully all his commandments, which I enjoin upon you this day, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. All these blessings shall come upon you and take effect if you will but heed the word of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the county. Blessed shall be the issue of your womb, the produce of your soil, and the offspring of your cattle, the calving of calving, I guess you say, of your herd, and the lambing of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be in your comings, and your blessing shall you be in your goings. The Lord will put you to rout before the enemies who attack you. They will march out against you by a single road, but flee from you by many roads. The Lord will ordain blessings for you upon your barns and upon all of your undertakings. He will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. The Lord will establish you as his holy people, as he swore to you, if you keep the commandments of the Lord your God and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that the Lord's name is for you, and they shall stand in fear of you.
That's good, Beverly. That gives us the idea. Thank you. And it goes on to say you'll be given rain for your growth. You'll be blessed in all your undertakings. If only you obey. I'm in verse 13. If only you obey and faithfully observe the commandments of the Lord your God that I enjoin upon you this day. So these are beautiful blessings. Everyone would want to be blessed, but something very striking here. Yes, Mary.
So maybe I'm missing it, but why are they saying amen after all of the curses, but not after any of the blessings?
I didn't plant Mary there, but that's exactly where we were going. Excellent question. Good for you. So the rabbis noticed that it's pretty blatant, right? The Levites are still in the middle and they're pronouncing these initial curses and everyone's saying amen. And then we get all these blessings and there's no amen. And wouldn't you think, of all things, you would want to say amen for a blessing as we do today? Okay, so any theories about that? Well, the rabbis in the Talmud, as I said, they were troubled by this. And so they worked it so that they concluded that there had to be parallelism. There had to be a parallelism that if the people said amen to the curses, which was the sense of amen saying, we acknowledge that these will be the consequences if we don't follow the laws. For the blessings, which are more, well, they also would be the consequences if we do follow the laws, that it had to be that the people said amen. I know it's not written in the text. They noticed immediately that it's not written in the text, but they said it had to be. I mean, everything is symmetrical here. Everything is parallel. We have two mountains facing each other. We have 6 tribes on one mountain, 6 tribes on the other mountain. We've got some curses and we've got some blessings, and the Levites had to have said, excuse me, amen for the blessings too. Now, how did they justify this? It's rather clever. What they do is they take the blessings, these blessings that were just read, and look at the passage that follows immediately after that. There are some more curses. We're not done with the curses. We had some curses after which the people said amen, but now we're going to get more. So Deuteronomy 28, verse 15 on page 1150. Anybody want to read a few verses? We're not going to read all the curses because there are 98 of them. Yes, Sandy, go ahead. But if you do not obey the Lord your God.
But if you do not obey the Lord your God to observe faithfully all of his commandments and laws, which I enjoin you this day, all these curses shall come upon you and take effect. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall be in the country. Cursed shall be in your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed shall, well, the same thing, right? Cursed shall be the issue of your womb and the produce of your soil, the calving of your herd and the lambing of your flock. Cursed shall you be in your comings, and cursed shall be in your goings. The Lord will let loose against your calamity, panic, and frustration in all of the enterprises you undertake, so that
okay, that's good. You can stop right there. So you noticed as you were reading, wait, we already heard this. These initial curses, the new curses that are coming here, are the exact inverse of the blessings that we just had. Okay, so what the rabbis do with this is they see, well, there's parallelism between these blessings and these curses. And the first curses, they said amen. So they must have kept on saying amen. They must have kept on saying amen for the blessings as well as the curses. I know it's not written in here after all of these, but they assume that amen was said. And by the way, this is the only place in the Torah, in the 5 books, where the word amen appears in this parsha, except for one other place, and that is the ritual for the woman who is accused by her husband of adultery and who has to drink the bitter waters, the sota. The poor sota, when she has to undergo this trial to determine if she was guilty or not, there's a formula that she has to recite, and that is recited, and the woman has to say amen, not only once but twice. Like, okay, I'll accept the judgment of the community on myself, which is very troubling. But that's the only other place in the 5 books where the word amen appears. It appears in Psalms later on, but I thought that was very interesting that, it becomes an integral part of our prayer service and also the temple service. But this is the only time, and we get it, times 12. So, in this scene, it is very powerful. So that's how the rabbis explain. I want to pause for another minute on the curses, because they are called, these curses, well, let me just review the ones that are coming up that we haven't even read yet. Some of the curses that you will be subjected to if you don't obey the laws: madness, blindness, cannibalism, you will eat your own children, locusts, drought, plagues, defeat by your enemies, and hemorrhoids. Sorry about that. They're very graphic. They're very painful and shocking to read. I mean, cannibalism, they are horrible. And does this list of curses, I'm just giving you a few, does it remind you of anything? Like, have you read anything this summer, hint, hint, you heard anything read this summer where these things actually happen? They're described as happening, that the Israelite people were subjected to plagues like this. I'm not, this is post-Egypt. Okay, think of the holiday of Tisha B'Av. What do we read on Tisha B'Av? You read Lamentations, Eicha, right? And Eicha describes what happened to the people in Jerusalem when they were conquered, historical events in graphic detail. And all these things that are listed in the curses did historically happen, according to the prophet who wrote Eicha. These things and I particularly remember cannibalism. I can't swear to the hemorrhoids, but I can definitely say, that the people were so hungry because Jerusalem was being besieged. The people were so hungry that they resorted to eating their own other human beings. It's pretty gruesome. And because these curses are so graphic and so shocking and terrible, the tochacha, the warning, they are called the tochacha, this whole passage of curses. It is recited traditionally in a low voice. When the Torah reader reads this section, it's a quieter voice, lest we be so appalled by hearing the words. I mean, we have to read them because they're in the Torah, but it's traditionally recited in a low voice. So this takes us to the whole question of why are there so many more curses than blessings? What do you think was the psychological utility or usefulness of warning the people that they will be cursed in so many ways if they don't obey the commandments? Because what you've got here, right, is the carrot and the stick. The carrot is the blessings and the stick is like 98 curses. What do you think is the psychology behind that? And, does it make you comfortable, uncomfortable? Is it useful? Is it effective? Richie.
Yeah, I have to go in a second, but I wanted to ask the cannibalism, where do we see that? It says I saw where the carcasses shall become food for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth.
Where does it say that you'll eat your?
I was reading page 1152, 2826.
Right.
Is there another place where it describes that?
1155 and 1156 have more about that.
Yes. Thank you very much, Beverly.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah, I see. Good.
Verses 54 and 55. He who is most tender and fastidious among you shall be too mean to his brother and the wife of his bosom and the children he has spared to share with any of them the flesh of the children that he eats.
Yeah, and
he's in such desperate straits.
I think 53 says it too. You shall eat your own.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
But what do you think of this? Why do you think there are so many curses and so few blessings? What's going to be more effective in getting the people to obey the law? Scaring them half to death, horrifying them, shocking them, or dangling a reward? What's more effective?
Instilling fear.
Okay, why? You want to develop that a little bit, Sandy?
Well, I remember as a teenager not doing things that I knew my parents would get upset about. And it wasn't that I feared any kind of physical retribution if I did A, B, or C, but I was afraid to upset them.
Mm-hmm.
So fear is fear in my case wasn't a real fear. It was more of I don't want to disappoint. But that always kept in the forefront of my mind. I wouldn't want to disappoint my parents. I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't do what it was that came to mind or that my friends did because that disappointment or fear was really paramount and in front of my mind.
That's lovely. And what you were doing there was following the commandment, honor your parents. That was a strong motivator to you, in a more positive way. You wanted their approval and you didn't want to hurt them.
There are plenty of us that didn't know about that commandment when we were teenagers. Let's be honest. If I could add, it strikes me, if you go to the end of the Parsha, Moses reminds him, hey, this is what God has done, but you weren't there. So the Israelites now weren't there when God took them out of Egypt and all those plagues. So they've heard about the plagues. This to me is like, this is shock therapy. This
Yeah,
is shocking people by saying, this is what's going to happen. And God did it once before. You weren't there, but pay attention. And it is, as Richie was alluding to, it's pretty gruesome.
absolutely. I mean, I think it makes us very uncomfortable to read this stuff. Judy.
So again, I think in very convoluted terms, I guess, but since there's so many more curses than blessings, it's harder for us as human beings to follow the blessings. It's a greater challenge. The curses there were just so many that we were being faced with. I equated that to smiling and frowning. It's so easy to frown, and it takes way more muscles to smile. But we want to do that, right? So sometimes it's the harder things that make it more worthwhile than the easier things to do.
Very nice. Thank you. Beverly.
Yeah, well, there's so many curses. So if you really read them and you try to pay attention to them, you say, this is crazy. I mean, the blessings, I think you can read and incorporate and think about it. And there's so many curses, and you go, wait, somebody wrote this. It's just, and it's just, yes, there's some things that if you don't do, it makes sense. But some of them, of course, you have to go back to the context of time. But there are just so many that, to me, I'm going to say, it lessens the blessings and the things that you should do. And because so many things that you shouldn't do, you go, no, this doesn't make sense. So I think there's no balance there. And if there's, a balance, to me, it would be more palatable or more way to understand it or accept it. I just feel like it's an overkill, so to speak. But I
Yeah,
don't
it's
about it.
it's definitely not balanced. So let me give you two commentaries on this. Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah compares the way the people are being treated here, and we've seen this metaphor throughout, to a parent and a child. And if a parent is going to be effective, is it more effective to use reward for good behavior or to threaten to use punishment for bad behavior? And Maimonides says, while fear may work initially, ultimately love will lead to a more lasting commitment to mitzvot. So, there's grounds for this in psychology. In modern psychology, we have positive reinforcement of good behavior and we have negative reinforcement. And, the negative is supposed to be a deterrent, but Maimonides says that love is more of a motivator than fear being a deterrent from bad behavior. The other commentary that I came across is that considering when we're reading this Parsha just a few weeks before Rosh Hashanah. And so this is kind of a colorful commentary, but the rabbis say we want to get all the bad stuff behind us as we approach Rosh Hashanah. We want to wipe away all these terrible things that could happen to us and focus on the good. But I don't totally get that, because on Yom Kippur, we really do focus on our bad behavior. But then we start off a new year and hopefully with a clean slate. Obviously, you have to do your teshuvah, you have to do your atonement, but and return to the commandments. But I thought that was interesting. I found a piece of art. Eileen, do you have that painting available? Yes, Jay, go ahead.
So the commandments are, for the most part, negative.
Mm-hmm. Thou shalt not.
Thou shalt not, with the except, even if you start with the 10 commandments, you just have 4 that are positive.
Good point. Good point.
And when you go to the 613, they're mostly, I would say 90% of the 613 are negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're classified as negative and positive commandments. So again, there is this thought that, threatening dire consequences if you don't obey the commandments that seems to be considered as a powerful motivator. This is a piece of art that I found on Chabad.com. It shows the two mountains. It's an artist's conception. Guess which one is the mountain of the curses, Mount Ebal?
The left.
Right. You've got this arid, barren mountain where nothing seems to be growing. In contrast, and right next to, and this is a pretty accurate depiction. As I said, if you look on Wikipedia, you'll see the two mountains and the saddle in between, or the valley in between. The one on the right is just so beautiful. The colors are beautiful. It's lush. It's fertile. And notice the rays of the sun coming down from the clouds in the upper right and shining on this mountain on the right. It's really quite beautiful. So I thought I just wanted to share that one with you. Okay, thanks very much, Eileen. Okay, I have one more thing that I want to do at the very end, but are there any questions or further thoughts about what we've done today?
I have a comment, Gail. What I loved in the beginning of the Parsha was it says the Israelites have accepted God. And that to me gets into this whole question of how we Jews and non-Jews look at us as the chosen people. And to me, it was interesting that it came before the sentence before. After that, it says, then God chose you. But the first thing it says is that we chose God.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the beginning of the Parsha. And
good.
I thought that was really helpful.
Yes, I mean, we modern Jews have a lot of trouble with the so-called chosen people concept. Many do. But if you look on page 1144, verse 18, so chapter 26 in Deuteronomy, verse 18, and the Lord has affirmed this day that you are, as he promised you, his treasured people, Am Segula, who shall observe all his commandments. Being the treasured people means it comes with this responsibility to observe the commandments, and that he will set you in fame and renown and glory high above all the nations that he has made, and that you shall be, as he promised, a holy people to the Lord your God. Well, you shall be a holy people. That's the responsibility. That's the part that we have to do. It's not just that God pastes the hechsher on us, or a seal of approval that we're automatically holy just because we're Jewish. We've got to live up to it. And yes, Beverly, unmute, please.
Yeah, I will. I sit and show on Rosh Hashanah the whole time, and Yom Kippur is so good for me. But when you start reading this, when I say it loses me, and because I love the sermons and I love the things that sort of relate, I guess, to today. And I think we once asked, when you have seven unblemished rams and blah. And so Rabbi Schwartz, I think, once said it's sort of tradition. You go back and do this. Maybe this is a heretical. Well, anyhow, being a heretic. But do you think? And I don't know what Reconstruction Judaism is, but do you think reading all of this, I know it is traditional, but do you think that some of it should be what we read, it should be more modernized? I mean, I don't know how I'm not expressing it well, because you go back and you're reading the curses and the blessings. And yes, I can understand that. But I just think you lose, when I say a lot of people, in the sense that their mind wanders there. So I don't know if I'm expressing it correctly, and it might not be.
No, you have a whatever your feeling is valid, and I'm sure others share it. I will just say, traditionally, we read all the words of the Torah, whether they're uncomfortable or not. I don't know any sect and any denomination of Judaism that actually removes, that has a Sefer Torah with the uncomfortable parts removed, but they have the discretion to skip over something. I don't know what they do in Reform or Reconstructionist congregations. Maybe they don't emphasize this, but probably more important would be to find an interpretation that is palatable enough to jive with our modern sensibilities.
Thank you.
And there are, you can feel free to write commentary or to develop commentary and interpretations as much as you like. Yeah, but the words are, pretty much locked in traditional Judaism. But thank you for raising that.
Thank you. Better.
Yeah, so I want to end. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Bev?
No, I just said it's more clarity as you explained.
Yeah, okay. I want to end today. Eileen, I don't know if you got this image that I sent you. It was this morning. Not to worry, I'm holding it up. This is a paper cut. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Which is hanging at the entrance of my front hall, right near my front door. And it's one of the blessings from our Parsha today. And it says, Baruch atah b'voecha, Baruch atah b'voecha, u'baruch atah b'tzeitecha. Blessed may you be in your coming in, and blessed may you be in your going out, which is verse 6 in chapter 28. Blessed shall you be in your comings, and blessed shall you be in your goings. Oh, Eileen, beautiful. Thank you. She's amazing. All right.
That is exquisite.
Isn't that beautiful?
Take a picture of it. I know it's shabby.
It's very, very beautiful.
My God.
And I forgot to say one thing. One of the last curses is, just to go back to the beginning of the Parsha, one of the last curses is that if you don't obey these commandments, you're going to have to go back to Egypt and be re-enslaved. Oh my, can you imagine Jewish history if that had happened? Like that would be the absolute worst thing that could happen to us, right? So I mentioned Yetziat Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt. Once we're out of Egypt, we're not going back. It's a very contemporary ring, if you get my drift. We're not going back. And I just thought that was very, very effective and worth pointing out. But Baruch atah b'voecha, Baruch atah b'tzeitecha. I wish you all, may you be blessed in your comings in and in your goings out. Amen. Selah.
Amen. Selah.